So, interior disassembly. The goal here is to get out all the interior panels, seats, carpets, roof liner and door cards. Starting with the front seats out, which is fairly self-explanatory. Seats are fairly much always 4 bolts in the corners to hold them down, sometimes with a wire underneath for seat controls or airbags. I was going to film every bit and show how you get all the panels out, but it's actually fairly easy. The concept is usually just there's a plastic cover that covers the screws or bolts that holds things together. I'll be showing a lot of the things that aren't extremely obvious, like the footrests that need to come out to get the carpets out. The plastic clips for that are very stuck on, so you have to pry them very hard, so it's helpful to know that this is just how it's done. On the rear seats, since they're folding seats, you lift them up and then their bolts are at the front with a strut and a spring to keep them up and make it easier to move. Almost all of the panels on the sides are very obvious clips to pull them out, and then hidden clips that just pull out. Some have bolts that are just obvious, like they bolt the plastics on, but also hold on tie-down points. So you can just start spinning most things out. I fairly much start from the top down, and most of the handles that hold the roof on are the type where you pry and slide a plastic cover out the way, and then unbolt the handles. And then the same with the lights that hold it up. You just carefully, or with a plastic edge, pry the corners off, and then there's bolts underneath it to undo, and then that part comes out. I took out all the weather stripping of all the doors because they just hold them in and make it look pretty by covering the edges with a little lip. You can see most of the panels come out, and then there's the visors and mirrors at the front that hold up the headliner. There's quite a lot of attachments, so you just work through them. You can see what I mean on how basically everything is just an obvious cover and then some bolts underneath it. You can see me looking for them before pulling too hard, like in this centerpiece. I expected more, but there was only one in the middle of the sunglasses holder, and then 2 that also held on the rear view mirror. Then you unplug the electrics like lights, and it all comes apart. With the roof liner, it'll want to fall, so it helps to have someone to hold it, and you can just focus on undoing the bolts. And you can find all the weird and wonderful things like bugs built up around the lights from years of them flying towards it when you open up the doors. I imagine things like this contribute to the smells of these cars when they get older, but stick around and you'll see some major sources of where the odors come from and how to get your car back to that new smell. The last thing is the rear aircon. The ducting basically brings it really close to the holes, and then a little fascia cover slides in and makes it really pretty. So you can just pull those out. After that, there's just the carpets, which shouldn't be held in by anything really, other than overlapping and a little bit of Velcro. There's a rear carpet, middle, and front to be removed. On the bottom of the carpets, there is a thicker insulation, which just helps with sound, maybe heat, and a bit of padding to make it all plush. All of this can be cleaned very nicely and get rid of spilt drinks, oils, dirt, and dust from years of the car being used, and these hold on to most of the smells along with the seat covers, which I'll get to later. So once you get those out, it's super satisfying and starts to smell a whole lot better. Your car starts to smell fresh, and you can add whatever air fresheners you want from there. The headliner isn't one where it's got foam or fabric stuck to it, and then you have to worry about adhesive failure from heat in the roof or age. So that's lovely actually. You can just wash these ones with a brush and soapy water. It's made of something like a card type material. It's hard to explain, but you'll know if you have a Patrol. It's strong though. As long as you support it and dry it fairly quickly, it's easy to clean. It does have quite a lot of structural strength, so it's not really a worry. It also helps get rid of things like smoke buildup if anyone has smoked in the car, or typical things like scrapes on the roof over time. I used my roof rack to support everything while I cleaned it, because it's basically the perfect size and drains away water immediately when you rinse it off. I just used laundry powder and water and then scrubbed away. Once I'd rinsed all the soap out thoroughly, I propped the roof up on some old garden chairs, being careful of the edges not to bend them, and then they can dry nicely in the sun and drain easily. It was the same concept with the carpets, which are obviously filthy. They build up dirt and everything from shoes and everything the car has been through that you might not know. Every spilt coffee, dropped fries, bugs, sand, oils that hold it all together, and it discolors it. And even cleaning it with a wet vacuum, that doesn't compare to cleaning it and rinsing it outside the car, when you can get really thorough. I sprinkled the powder over it to distribute it nicely and focused on any dark spots. Then I wet it all down and brushed and scrubbed away. The soap does stick to it quite a lot, which is a good thing to break down the dirt, but just make sure you rinse it for a while to wash everything out. It started to get dark since I was brushing for a while, and you can see as the sun fades, I spent quite some time just rinsing it out. Once you've got it all clean and it's dried properly, the soap will have broken down all the oils and stuff to keep the dirt together and gotten rid of almost all the surface level or smelly stuff. But if you look closely, since it's such a thick and deep carpet, it really holds onto the sand as it settles down into it. So I'm not kidding, you can literally vacuum it 10 times and not get everything out, so take your time. On the rear wheel arch covers, it's a similar fabric type material to the roof liner, just dyed black, so you can also wash that just like the roof liner. Just a bit of soapy water and then rinse it off thoroughly and let it dry. On the door cards, there's plastics, leather, and a card type material. But there's also a fabric type material that holds onto dirt. That you can remove from the back of the door cards and separate. Then clean out in the same way. This one's backing is like a woody, more like actual card, cork, or well, woody material. So you really don't want to soak this for too long, and make sure you dry it very quickly and dry it flat so it doesn't warp. But if it does just a tiny bit, it's fine because there are so many screws all over it that will pull it straight again when you put it back on the plastics of the door cards, and then you clip it back into the door. On the rear seats, the fabric piece is part of the bottom leather piece, so all that comes off is the top bit and the middle piece that comes out, and that is your whole door card. The speaker comes off too. You can see what I'm talking about from the back, where this is the door card and just the speaker, middle piece and top piece come off, and then there's this whole card bit with a bit of fabric and leather on it. So once you take the card out, you are left with this top piece, middle piece and the speaker, and then this whole card is one piece with the fabric and leather attached to it. Then you can give this whole thing a clean, but mainly just the fabric, which holds onto dirt, since the leather can fairly much just be wiped, but it's nice to give this a good clean. And just make sure you dry it properly and quickly so this card doesn't get damaged. Now moving on with the interior disassembly, further than just cleaning the stock things, I wanted to remove things like the rear AC ducting in this car to be able to reach as much of the quarter panels as possible, so I can put as much sound deadening on them as possible later and reduce the big panel resonance of this big boxy car as much as possible, since it currently sounds like this. You can wipe down as much off the surfaces now underneath these panels as much as you want, mainly just the floor since the carpet's out now and it probably won't be out for a very long time. Plus, if you're going to be adding sound deadening, it needs to be fairly clean to be able to stick to it. Of all these super drummy panels, the worst culprit is probably the one right at the front, just below the driver and front passenger. So this one will be excellent to sound deaden. Another handy little tip. While you've got everything out, although you can do this when you just remove the center console only, you don't have to go this far to get to it, but while you're here, you can tighten up the handbrake cable because I know it's a common issue for people when these stretch as they age, and on a heavy 4x4, you want it to have some good bite if you leave it up on a hill, so tightening this just gives you a good feel. Fairly self-explanatory, just tighten it up and pull the handbrake until it's at a point that you're happy. Keeping in mind, it does have to fit in the center console hole, so don't tighten it too much where it then doesn't rise up. Another thing to get to while the interior is out and it's easy to access, believe it or not, this car doesn't come with a cabin air filter from stock. I think only the higher spec models do, so it just gets leaves and dust blowing into the cabin, which is a bit crap, but it does actually have a spot for one, so you can add one by essentially just cutting this plastic out here and fitting the filters to it. I did this just by tapping a knife in and using a hammer to tap it through the plastic. It cut right along the line really neatly. The filter will have foam around it to seal here, and there will be a clip or two to hold it in. You can take this one over here because the plastic plastic is melted together, so it isn't actually holding anything. There isn't a place for a second clip at the top, but it should be rigid enough that just the bottom one's clamps will hold it and seal it enough. If you want to glue in a tab in this hard to reach area, that's up to you, but I was happy with how much it sealed. And there's rails into the housing that accept the filter, so just get it lined up properly. Since it has always been sealed, there'll be some leaves built up in there, so you can take out the blower motor to be able to reach in and grab them all out. With the plastics from the doors and center consoles that notoriously start to look faded, and especially when people sand them to attach mounts for phones and things like that, you can sand these very lightly to roughen them up, and then use a plastic compatible paint that doesn't bubble to paint over them and give them a new look. It's totally up to you how you choose to make these look now. I went with the stock look, so I also masked off incredibly precisely to paint these little details black too. On the remaining interior plastics that definitely don't get painted, there's just dirt stuck in its texture. With it out the car, it's now easy to give them a proper clean, where you can steam them, use polish to scrub out the dirt, and get them back to brand new. Now, on the seatbelts, they are known for starting to go slack as the spring inside them starts to get old. What can also happen is if the belt is dirty, it actually starts to get marginally thicker, so it can't retract as well, since it can't actually wind as tightly. So, I gave them a pressure wash from a decent distance, just with water, and let them dry. There is a debate about how you shouldn't use soaps or chemicals on seatbelts, because they can leave residue that actually make it worse, and since it's a safety thing, you also don't want to weaken the belt at all. So here's how it works. You can hold the seatbelt up in a vise, and it has to be held upright and still because there's a check ball that I'll explain a bit more of later but it will stop it moving if it's unstable. So hold it still and upright so the ball can settle to the bottom, like when the car is sitting still. There's this one little cover over here that covers the coil spring that is wound up in here, and that's why you don't want to disassemble this thing. Because coil springs can not only fling out and poke you in the eye, but they're also very hard to wind back up. So here's what you can do. The seatbelt comes out like this, and you want to pull it right out until the end. The end is held in here. I'll show it again from the side with the cover off. When you pull the belt out, the spring gets wound tighter and wants to pull it back. So I wound it out all the way, and since the spring will want to fling back, you have to hold it still and don't let the tool slip for the next part, or the spring will fling itself off and then you'll have to disassemble it, and to rewind it is a huge pain and takes ages. So hold it still and firmly and press the tool in here. You can then use a little pick tool like this to pry the belt out here and pull it further through. There is this locking pin in here that stops it going through. This is what holds your seatbelt in place. So when that's in, when it spins, it will spin the belt too. So pull it out just a little bit and then place a flat screwdriver through the plastic housing that wants to spin with that spring. The screwdriver will stop it spinning when it comes in contact with the rest of the housing. Only once the screwdriver is in there and very stable so it won't fall out, you can then remove the pin and the tool that you were holding to stop it spinning from the side. You can then remove the belt by pulling it through the other side. Don't disturb the screwdriver when you do, just wiggle the belt out. You can only remove the screwdriver once you have this tool pressed into the side again. Once you have the tool in and the screwdriver removed, with no belt, you can keep spinning it the way it goes when you pull the belt out, so it essentially makes it tighter. You can spin until the spring locks against itself, which is as strong as it'll go, which is fine for the older spring, because it's worn anyway, so the strongest is actually just adequate. Once you have it tighter, you can slowly get it back to the closest point in the rotation where the slot lines up again for the screwdriver to go through and hold it in there. You then put the screwdriver back through before letting go. Once again, if you let go, nothing will stop it from spinning and it will unwind completely and maybe dislodge the ring, so don't slip with the tool and keep pressure until the screwdriver is through. Once the screwdriver is through, you can feed the belt back through its slot and put the pin back in. Then, because the screwdriver takes up space in there, but before removing it, you have to hold the spring tension with the tool again. You can then hold it and pull the screwdriver out. Once you do that, pull the belt back through the other side until the pin sits inside its slot, which is within the little rotating assembly. I've just put the screwdriver in the belt at the back to illustrate this point, that you'll have to pull it through the back. Then with the belt, you can pull up while holding the spring, and with the pin in place again, you can then let go of the spring, and you can see why you've had to hold it, because it will spin like this and wind the belt back up again. Only take this on if you understood it perfectly. It is messing with safety equipment, so if you're not qualified, don't do it, and if you break it, buy another seatbelt. Don't risk safety. In the next episode, I'll be sound deadening the interior and putting all the cleaning parts back in, so stick around for that so you can see the massive difference it makes to the panels and how it takes the car from ordinary to that luxury feel when it sounds solid and insulated. Thank you so much for watching, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.